In the fall of 2020, this empty stage should have been full of 100 newsies singing and dancing. But here we are. COVID has impacted the arts in every conceivable way. Theater is about connection, contact, full range of expression. And this barrier between us keeps us safe, but it also keeps us from interacting in the way we want. We faced this reality in the fall by deciding to deep dive into verbatim theater, a first-person interview, word-for-word style of storytelling. Inspired by the documentary work of Anna Deavere Smith, activist, actor, and playwright, members of the choir, dance program, and advanced acting classes looked around at our teachers, staff, friends, family members, and alumni and asked them to tell us about their work in 2020. Their stories were courageous, humbling, and uplifting. THER's mission is to inspire a diverse community of students to moral, intellectual, aesthetic, and physical excellence so that each may rise to honorable achievement and contribute to the common good. In the first part of our 3-act play, you will meet members of THER's faculty, staff, and student body who are contributing to the common good. In the second, you'll hear from alumni and distinguished community members who are rising to honorable achievement by impacting the world, from participating in the Black Lives Matter movement to volunteering in Beirut after last summer's bombing. In the final act, you will meet the ordinary people in our neighborhood, doctors, nurses, mental health practitioners, and more, who have done extraordinary and heroic acts to keep us safe and healthy. While we've missed the camaraderie of the rehearsal space, this project gave us an opportunity to look beyond ourselves and see the pandemic through the eyes of another person. We hope you enjoy our stories.
Singing, the waitress singing, the mail worker singing, the manager singing,
the fireman singing,
each one singing, the teacher, the trucker, reporter,
the housewife.
I hear America singing, America singing.
Somebody, don't you wanna hear the story of my life? One of them movie companies, TV documentaries. Won't you come and ask me, please? And pay me $1 million to tell you what I do at the store. 'Cause if you pay me $1 million, I wouldn't have to go and do it no more.
1, 2, 3, 4, just like the song sang, all the live long day. Everybody done know that song, working for a living the whole day long, all the live long day. Hey somebody, won't you turn your head, take a look my way. I'm getting old and I tell you, getting old ain't nothing new. Step again with you know who. Me and my old pal Monday, on rain or shine, we'll be showing. Me and my old pal Monday, and another cup of coffee, get the juices flowing. Another cup of coffee, get the juices flowing. Another cup of coffee, get the juices flowing. And it's 1, 2, 3, get going. Just like the song sang, all the live long day. Everybody done know that song, working for a living the whole day long, all the live long day. Just like the song
Just like the song say now,
all the live long day. Just like the song
just like the song say now,
all the live long day. Just like the song
just like the song say now,
all the live long day. Just like the song
just like the song say now,
all the live long day. Everybody
first question for you, Mr. Odom, is you, other than being a faculty here, also went to school here.
I did.
So what's been like the biggest change as far as there's allyship between people of color for
Yeah.
you as faculty and then you when you went to school here?
For sure. I'll start with being here as a student, and for my experience as a Thayer student, I'd say one of the things that we had here was a cohort of Black students who came from the city. So we had that opportunity to see one another coming from the city, taking the train into school together. And we had one another. We looked out for one another. We made sure that no one took the train home alone. We had Sawyer lobby as well. And I'd say, for many of us, we had Mr. Dixon, who was our mentor, who was our teacher, who was our coach for many of us. We had that. We felt supported by faculty here, but we also knew that we had that comfort in one another, and we had our friends, from different racial backgrounds, but we knew we could always come back to Sawyer and gain that support here. And I don't think it was as comfortable to talk about issues that were happening on campus at Thayer as it is now, and actually naming things that are happening, in communities that are underrepresented. I think now, being on the other side as a faculty member, and in particular, incidences that have happened in the spring and the summer, I think we're getting to a point as a community where everyone's, comfortable having the conversation or uncomfortable, but either way, it's happening, and we're putting language to what's happening, in a lot of these communities and what's happening in society with discrimination and racial discrimination and Black people in particular being discriminated against and disproportionately marginalized. I would say allyship. That voice has become a lot louder now, where you're seeing more students that are non-Black speaking up on behalf of Black students and issues that are happening in our society. So I would say that allyship in terms of students and faculty, that has been a shift in dynamic for sure.
And who have been like some students that have like especially shared their voice or shared their story multiple times?
Yeah. I mean, names that come to mind are Journey Day King has been super active in lending her voice. Miles Wilson has been one. Giovanna Walker has been one who has shared a lot of her passions for this work and social justice. Marvin Musimi Kamali, Layla for sure. Layla Claiborne has been very vocal. Zach Gondelman has been a voice for many of the students. Maddie Jordan Siegel, for sure, and the list kind of goes on, and it's just good to see the youth leading the way in a lot of these issues. And hopefully they're feeling the support from faculty to be on board. And I will have to, a special shout out to Matt Dunn, who's been, leading the way on the faculty front, and Lynette Sumter, who's been awesome with the institution of this anti-racism course.
And I had the privilege of interviewing Jasmine Hicks, who you know well.
Yes.
Who talked about, she gave some advice to students and said to fill the space. And she said that your voice is always important. Even
Absolutely.
if it might not seem like it is. It's
Absolutely.
always important. Do the things you're passionate in. That's very great. What advice do you have for other students like that who might not know that their voice is important?
Yeah, those are great words to live by. But I'd also echo that. But also, I'd say for those who are still finding out their voice, For those who have found their voice, speak up for those who are traditionally voiceless right now, and speak up for those who may need it. They need to be seen and be heard. Those are the things that I would say, for students to be comfortable doing.
Well, those are all my questions.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for doing this.
You got it. You got it.
I teach science, mainly the physical sciences. Physics, chemistry a little bit, earth science mostly. I like physics best because physics is very black and white, particularly the subject of mechanics. There's always a correct answer. It explains everything that happens in everyday life. Like if you slip on ice walking into school, there's a physics reason for this. There wasn't a sufficient coefficient of friction between your foot and the ground to allow the ground to push back on you. And that's why your foot slipped out. Everything to do with sports, everything to do with flying and boating, riding bikes and hiking, all comes down to physics. So I was struck by that at a very early age. I like the fact that it's very different at Thayer than where I went to high school. Where I went to high school did not have a very vibrant arts program. And I found out later in life that I'm a wee bit of a ham. Yeah, and I like being in the limelight, and I wish I'd had that opportunity to sort of explore that when I was younger. The thing I like about Thayer is that you can get kids from all kinds of different crowds that get involved with the theater program. You get theater kids that are involved in athletics, you've got mathletes that are involved in the theater, you've got mathletes that are involved in sports, contact sports. One of my favorite memories is seeing defensive or offensive linemen. What was the Richmond kid's name? Nate. Yeah, right, Nate Richmond. Went on to play football at Boston College. Probably could have gone pro. Wasn't he one of the leads in Little Shop of Horrors? That was so cool. And he's appeared in a movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yeah, so Thayer gave him the opportunity to explore that part of his personality. And I think he's parlayed that into a lot of success in life. So I'm just, we have all kinds of stories like that. So that's what makes this place special. If you can be whatever you want to be. And it's a safe environment to go give it a try, get involved, and even if it doesn't work out for you, the stakes are pretty low. We've got a nice soft landing here for you so you can get up and go try something else. In the spring, we didn't know what the fall was going to look like, so we had to start early, investigating different kind of ways to crack this nut, because we had the constraints that were put out there by the CDC and the public health departments, but we didn't know exactly how that would work. We had to completely change the way that we're doing business. There was all kinds of pushback initially, to kind of let people get there on their own, which was very nerve-wracking for me, because the longer we waited, that means less time I had to sort of, grind and change and type and sift and whatever, to try to get everybody, people and places at different times, not have anything conflicting. So there's a 3-week period, like the last week in July to the second weekend of August, where I was kind of doing things around the clock to try and get this school schedules published and out to the families, because they didn't know what it was going to look like either. And after the schedules went out, there was a lot of inquiry, let's say. It was just an awful lot of emails and phone calls from people who just didn't understand it, because it was so different. So it was a very challenging summer, lots of sleepless nights, but I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish. I keep using the collective we, because I had a lot of help from the department heads group, from Mr. Thompson in particular. He's been a huge, huge help to me and a source of comfort. When things got a little strange, let's say, the dean's group was very helpful. Various teachers and parents and even students that, came back and said, all right, this is weird, but I understand that we have all these constraints and we're doing the best we can. To segue into contributing to the common good, I think that's such a cool mission statement that we have, allowing each to rise to honorable achievement and to contribute to the common good. Everybody's got to find their way to do it. And I think that, you're inspired in different ways. You see Mr. Forrest with the mathletes, he's very passionate about it. You see Mr. Smith with the astronomy and astrophotography, extremely passionate in it. Miss Heyman with the all things English, and Miss Hines loves the theater. Gotta add one more. Gotta give a special big shout out to my direct boss, Mr. Donovan, who's been a tremendous confidant and mentor and role model, really, You talk about contributing to the common good. He does so many things around here that a lot of people don't know about. Mr. Donovan is a campus superstar. So I gotta give a shout out to a great guy. everybody has their little bit to contribute. I guess, me with scheduling and being a knucklehead and providing comic relief, I guess that's part of my task around here. So, we're just looking for people to kick in, bring something to the table. Everybody's gonna bring something different. Be a giver, not a taker. And, we're gonna have a good, strong community and everybody's gonna be fired up and, go Tigers!
So I'm Miss Taylor, or Miss Taylor, or Tay, and I'm an upper school computer science and math teacher, and I also work with the Mega Club, which is the diversity class on campus. And I work with new faculty as they come into Thayer. I love my job. I think there's never a boring day. I'm always running around, putting out fires, as well as getting to teach classes that I enjoy teaching and subjects that I enjoy. I think the most important part of my job is to be there to support and empower my students. That just doesn't happen in the math classroom, but it can. I just think, it's really there to be there as an adult figure in their life that they can know and trust. They can come to and they can learn from. I would say the best part of my job is when I have students in my office that I'm helping with math, but I'm also looking over a grade that I'm also helping whatever they need to do. But what makes it so awesome is that I know they can trust me as an adult. I know that they have somewhere to go and feel safe, so that's a really cool part of my job. The most difficult part for me has been the inconsistent interaction with seeing kids every day. Just because I think that's so much of the teacher and student relationship, kinda. It just grows from that. And it's just been really hard to have kids on Zoom for one half and just have it in the spring full time. I just think it's really, really missing all the interactions with my colleagues that I was used to having. So, just during free periods or in passing, so it's been kind of tricky. I would say as I've gotten older, my passions have changed some. In high school, I would have said my passion was sports and only sports. In college, I probably would have given you the same answer. But now, I'm realizing along with sports, I'm more than an athlete. I'm more than a coach. I've become more passionate with diversity issues and gotten more involved in diversity issues at Thayer. This summer, I was provided the wonderful opportunity to contribute to the common good at Thayer and beyond. It started with a vigil that took place last spring, and I was pretty involved with that. And I think that night impacted our community in a large and important way. And I was humbled and honored to be someone who our students could trust and taking that on. Well, one in particular accomplishment I'm proud of at Thayer was being the graduation speaker last spring. I said in the graduation speech, there was almost twin pandemics happening. There are protests around the world fighting against injustice and promoting anti-racism, and also they're living in health pandemic for COVID, so I felt a little pressure to try and tackle those issues. So I was honored to be able to use my words again to empower the students. I think it was really important for me to get up there and say Black Lives Matter. It was important for me to get up there while students were sitting 6 feet apart from each other wearing masks, which is really hard for them because they just wanted a regular graduation. Again, I just feel honored and humbled to be able to be the speaker. I would just add that I'm really proud to be part of Thayer. And I'm just really proud that we're working to empower every single person in our community. So in whatever way we see is best, I just feel a lot of gratitude for being in a community with these colleagues and these students.
Good morning, Mr. Koskoris, Mr. Thompson, students, faculty, and staff. Good morning to all of our new students, 5th and 6th graders, our new 9th graders, welcome. And to our seniors, the class of 2021, good morning. And welcome to our last convocation. I'm humbled and excited to be speaking to you all this morning at such a pivotal moment in history. We stand here among a global pandemic, a presidential election, and an ongoing cry for racial justice. Today I have two messages for you all. My first is this. Since we left campus last March, I had come to the realization that COVID has taken so much from us. I found myself longing for memories that hadn't been made, and pictures that hadn't been taken, and experiences that hadn't been had. But folks, we cannot look at this year in that light. I'm a firm believer in the old saying that you will only be as happy as you decide to be. And because of that, I have adopted a different mindset. I did away with the brooding and the self-pity, and instead of allowing COVID to take value away from this school year, I decided to let it show the value that each day brings. How incredibly fortunate are we to be on campus as often as we are planning to? And while it's only half of what we initially hoped for, we must simply adapt to the situation and make our days mean twice as much. Strive for excellence, work hard, take advantage of the opportunities you have been given, but also find time for yourself, for your friends. Take each day and evaluate yourself. Have I worked hard? Have I fulfilled my goals? Have I fulfilled myself? And most importantly, have I been a good person? This leads me into my second of two messages. As I stated, we are at a time of reckoning for the ongoing cry for racial justice. This is a time of great stress and heartbreak for the Black, Indigenous, and POC community right now. But understand that it is also a time of empowerment, of excellence, and pride. I call to Thayer Academy's white students, faculty, and staff. We need to do better than we have in previous years. We need to truly be actively anti-racist. We need to create a safe space for our BIPOC brothers, sisters, and siblings that truly makes them feel welcomed and loved. We cannot continue as we have been and pretend that we have been doing our part, because we have not. Years from now, our children will look back and think about us in our moment in history and what we chose to do in this time. Be someone who future Thayer Tigers are proud of. Someone who will make those future students say, look at the work they put in to make my life here at school better. So in conclusion, be kind, be inclusive, be actively anti-racist. Wear a mask, social distance so that we can continue to come to school and keep each other safe. Let our current situation teach you the value that each day holds, and finally, be well. Take care of yourself and others, lift each other up, and be your best self. Thank you.
So, what is your name and what do you do?
Hello. So my name is Zach Bauerman, and I serve as the Temple Beth Elohim student intern. And what that basically means is I have three main functions. I help and lead with our clergy. So I help them, I do programmatic support, helping to plan things and work on different events. I lead myself, I teach and lead and lecture. And then the third part is learning. I have the awesome privilege of being an investigative sponge. I just sort of am there and get to learn constantly, which is amazing. But also a fair amount of leading myself. And then pastoral care, working with our community and helping different congregants with all of their different needs.
Awesome. So, how has work with the congregation changed during the pandemic?
Yeah, everything we do, COVID has really hit us in all of our ways we have to cope in history. How do we cope with disease? We come together, we sing, we share what's in our hearts with each other to heal. You just can't do that in COVID. And so the work of the synagogue really had to pivot and pivot quite quickly. So where we would be doing stuff online, everything is on Zoom. We've created a really big online presence. Every week at our Shabbat services, we have about 800 to 900 people on a weekly basis. And then over the high holy days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we got about 1,500 computers per service. So we've shifted what was this really vibrant in-person community just all on Zoom, and switching that to a virtual makom or Hebrew home.
And how did you work to serve the elderly during these trying times?
So I have always had the incredible privilege of working a lot with our oldest congregants. I speak a lot about how we are on sort of the bookends of life, right? We're all on this same journey, but myself as a teen and them as our oldest are really on different ends of that journey, but how there's something really special to be able to look at life through that sort of ends perspective. So I work a lot with them. But we have done so much with our oldest congregants. I mean, so much of synagogue life in general is circled around them. So we did classes on how to bake challah online and taking what we loved about in person and just shifting it online. We taught or had one of our staff members go to many of the elderly people's homes to make sure they had a computer. They knew how to get on Zoom, so that when we rolled out this sort of larger, more expansive program on classes and all that stuff, they were able to access it really easily. But it's mostly the same stuff. We did do a challah baking class, which was amazing. I did a number of healing services because I already had that relationship with those people. So to just come into a Zoom room and say, my expectation of you is absolutely nothing, just come here and heal. Allow your soul to be lightened for a couple of minutes. How can we make Zoom an engaging sing-along space is something I'm constantly asking. Obviously, I can't have 500 people in a room singing along with me like I used to do on a weekly basis. But I can get those people on Zoom. And especially with our youngest kids, it's like, okay, everyone get really close to your Zoom camera and make a really big face. And then doing a lot of really physical stuff. But also understanding that it's really hard to be a human right now. It's like a hard time to be a person. And so using our more meditative pieces and our traditions to really help make a bridge from point to point. You can feel like you're sort of drowning in COVID, but really using music as a way to connect people and to bring people together, but being really creative about how we do it.
Can you tell us what the sense of community means to you?
For me, community is that intangible feeling you get when you're around people that share a common belief or are there for a similar purpose. And the incredible thing about in-person community, especially the place like TBE where we have such a vibrant life and pulse to us, is you could feel it when you're in that building. You could feel it. And so translating that to Zoom, in theory, was hard, but actually it made us a lot stronger. And it meant that we were actively seeking out one another. We rolled out a program that I helped roll out we called it Tea Time. We paired up our oldest congregants and anyone else who wanted to for just a 20-minute Zoom call. Just come and chat. Find people, make connection, and make us stronger. We're better when we're together, and because we're physically apart doesn't mean we have to be socially apart. And really taking time on a weekly or daily basis to say, what am I doing for others? How can I better my world?
What do I do? What don't I do? I do a little bit of everything. I take phone calls. I'm usually the first voice people hear when they come into contact with the school. I direct them to admissions or whoever they need to be at or whoever they need to be put through. Then kids' schedules and just about whatever people need I try to do. It's funny when people were on tour, when they physically could be on campus on tours, which I thought was nice. A lot of kids would say, oh, he does this, he does that, he does everything. And I'm supposed to know where everyone is and what everyone is doing and what they are using, and usually I have to find them. And I'm usually the last one to find out what's going on, which I find amusing that everyone thinks that I know what is going on. I like my job. At times, not so much now that COVID is here because it's a lot quieter. Sometimes it's like literally a 3-ring circus. And thank goodness I can multitask because a lot of it I take in. Everything's swirling around me, and then later on in my mind, I go back through what had transpired and sort everything out. And I'm lucky to be blessed, knock on wood, with a pretty good memory, so if I forget something, I can hopefully pull it out of my memory. One time, a kid called, and his son would be coming to school late. I hesitated for a second and said, "Joe, what are you doing?" There was dead silence. I said, "Joe, are you down the Cape?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "We will see you when we get to school." So about an hour and a half later, he signs in and he says, "How do you know it wasn't my father?" I said, "Joe, I talk to your father all the time. He has a voice in the cellar. You don't." I like seeing the kids, interacting with the kids on a daily basis. I miss seeing the middle school kids come over for lunch. It was literally a stampede. Before COVID, they were saying hello. They're quite funny. The middle school kids would tell you anything. It's so different now. Things are, I feel, as of right now, over 210,000 people have died. I feel so bad for them. I mean, family members are in the hospital, and you are not allowed to see them. They are literally dying alone. But on the other hand, I think a lot of good has come out of the pandemic. I think family dinners have been brought back. It forces you to sit down, whether you like them or not, and speak to them to find out what is going on. You know, time to reconnect. And all that great stuff that keeps me up on YouTube at night. Musical stuff people have put me on, positive message people have put together from all over the world. They come together to be like one voice, which I think is absolutely amazing. And I think music is medicine. Music is healing.
Yeah, dude, we did such cool stuff, man. We were doing taco scenes and like crazy cool stuff, man. We had farms driving up and dropping stuff off, but this year it's like, you know, pack it up, send it out. It's driving me insane. But we're trying to do the best we can with it. Overall, I love my job. It's the greatest job a chef could have. Before this, I did a ton of catering. I lied my way into a ton of positions just so I could figure it out, and that's how I got my knowledge. I was a scrapper, you know? I just came from the bottom straight up, as hardcore as I could. And if anybody was in front of me, I had to bash my way right through them. I had to do it. I had to be an executive chef. I had to be a sous chef. Honestly, I was usually 10 feet into trouble before I knew I stepped into it, because just full speed ahead. I always believed in working hard. My mom was amazing. We grew up very poor, and when I started working around the age of 12, I worked at a local restaurant and just got my butt kicked dishwashing. But we were broke, so at the restaurant, I could eat whatever I wanted. And I was really stoked to come in and get like all the salad and bread I wanted, I remember. And I'd keep it at my station and the dishwashing area, And all the chef's pans would come back and they'd literally throw them to you through the window. And all the pans would have all these cool sauces, and I would just sit there and try to sop up all the sauces with the bread. I'd try to figure out what's what, and can I say I was fascinated by it. My job here, I had no idea where it could get so good. I'm truly happy here. They have an amazing budget here. Their expectations are extremely realistic. They don't tie my hands and expect more. They listen. The kids are knowledgeable. They know what's going on. They understand the food. They understand the choices we give them. Honestly, this place is just the best. I literally have the ultimate freedom. When I was hired, my instructions were simply like, we feel that there's a lot of kid food, which is cool, but we really need a better palate. We need adult food too. So I just try to create a balance between the two. It's the best freaking job in the world. And then we have these great people around me. We hired a rocking team, so by all means, you have to talk about them. Our team is incredible. Everybody in that kitchen has a voice. Everybody to me is equal. Everything is everybody's job. There's no BS job titles, none of that. You take away all that irresponsibility and you say everybody takes ownership, everybody has an opinion, and everybody's equal, and that's how you maintain an amazing team. You know it's a machine. Those dishwashers don't show up, your whole operation is screwed. So when we hire people, well, by the way, we call it the Island of Misfit Toys because they're all kind of freaky, but They're perfect freaks. But I hire people. I don't hire resumes. These guys can conceptualize and execute whatever dish I think of. So now that means you don't have one head going full speed ahead with trailers behind you. You got 12 trains going full speed ahead. That's a badass machine, dude. That's solid power and solid energy. These guys collaborate on it and they kill it. So, yeah, dude. I don't like a stuffy chef wearing a freaking hat. I don't like wearing coats. My friends wear coats with awards on it. I've got magazines. I've got awards, gold medals from the Culinary Olympics, Best of the West. I don't post any of that, dude. That was yesterday, you know? Who are you gonna be tomorrow? That's my goal, you know? I've never saved a life. I make people happy. I take raw stuff, turn it into cooked stuff, and it's good. And we kick ass. It's like an art to me.
And assemble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition, and yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the street the traffic starts jumping, with folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5 for service and devotion. You would think that I would deserve a fat promotion. Want to move ahead, but the boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is out to get me. Watch them shatter. You're just a step on the boss man's ladder. You got dreams you'll never take away. You're in the same boat with a lot of your friends, waiting for the day your ship will come in and the tide's gonna turn and it's gonna roll your way. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taken and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5, yeah, they got you where they want you. There's a better life that you dream about it, don't you? It's a rich man's game, no matter what they call it. And you spend your life putting money in his wallet. 9 to 5, whoa, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5, yeah, they got you where they want you. There's a better life and you dream about it, don't you? It's a rich man's game, no matter what they call it. And you spend your life putting money in his wallet. 9 to 5, yeah. Guess what? That's your life. Want to lose my head.
Our roots may begin here at Thayer, but they expand in ways we cannot predict. At Thayer, we learn to engage with the world, care about other people, and speak up for the things we believe in so that we can be ready for the wide world beyond these walls. In our next segment, you will meet some new characters. Many of them got their start here at Thayer, and others have joined our family along the way. All of them came from humble origins and rose to honorable achievement through hard work and by using their own gifts and talents to positively impact others. We are grateful for their service and contributions to our society.
I left the corporate world. I used to work in marketing and consulting throughout the Middle East, and then just stopped everything. It required a lot of travel, and it was just a lifestyle that I didn't want anymore. And I left everything to start writing a screenplay about Khalil Gibran. When I was reading his works, I felt very akin to him. We share a lot of common things. I grew up in the States and went to Lebanon after law school, and he grew up in Lebanon and then came to the States, so just there were a lot of similarities culturally with the language, the treatment as an immigrant, even though I wasn't, and the treatment here in Lebanon, how you're treated as an American, etc., etc. So it was really wonderful. I loved being in that world and writing, and someone suggested that I send it to a film festival at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, basically the Oscars. They have the festival for amateur writers, so it qualified. The first draft qualified, and someone took notice of that, a producer who's part of the Academy, and who's actually looking for a script about Khalil Gibran. So I guess the stars were aligned that day, and that launched my writing career. I have a lot of people that I work with when they want to write a series or a film in English. People reach out. We have a lot of expats and creative people that come from here. So it's usually like the art hub of the Middle East. So people tend to reach out for writers and artists from Beirut. So it's nice to be a part of these projects. And in the pandemic, Lebanon was surprisingly very strict about the quarantine. We had a curfew for a very long time. And it's actually on and off depending on the numbers. People were abiding by it. I was surprised, actually, when I would see how it's being treated in the States. It's actually a lot more organized here, I felt. It's a much smaller country, so it's more manageable. There's just so much going on politically and socially in Lebanon. Lately, it's just crazy here. I think that there has to be a major tribute to the Lebanese people for everything they've endured. The whole world is going through this dark time with the pandemic. But Lebanon especially has so many other concerns that I think the pandemic is one that people can actually control. So when you're losing control of everything else and your life, at least there's one thing that, you can do your part in. So people were really staying home, people wear their masks. When things started opening up again, people were practicing social distancing. But everyone here is just really down these days ever since the explosion happened. I just think that people were already at the end of the rope. There's been an economic crisis for a good year now, so people have been really devastated. So people have been so frustrated with the politics, with the lack of any stability, that people just took to the streets. And there were a lot of people from there that would ask me or follow me on social media just to keep track of what's going on. So this was a nice way to bring people together. All Lebanese felt that no matter our religious or political or social difference, everybody came together to be heard. So it was a beautiful thing to watch, even though we weren't getting anywhere with the government. But when the explosion happened, I think everybody here needs to address the mental health. Most people are super down. They do not see a light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's the first time in Lebanon's history that I've actually seen such desperation or heard of it, because they're so resilient and because it was preventable. And it was just such a lack of respect for the people to have these kind of materials at the port, right in the middle of the city. It was just such a slap in the face. And people can't get over it. So many people have left, they've just picked up and left, and I see a definite change. It's not like times before where something would happen, an assassination or a bomb or anything that's devastating, everyone would bounce back. I think this time is different. I think a lot of people just give up. And there are always tears in my eyes. Let's just put it that way. In everyone's. It's really sad. The entire city was destroyed. But to see the young people immediately mobilizing, taking to the streets and helping people cleaning up, there's always some beauty in the darkness and the ugly. The people that really come together, nobody relied on the political system, the government, to do anything here. They relied on the people and themselves. It's a beautiful thing to watch, but I think it's going to take a really, really long time for Lebanon to bounce back after this.
When I came back from deployment, I realized that I really enjoyed the law enforcement aspect and the military side. All over the world, because I was good at it, but more so than being good at it, I recognized that I was helping people, and that was important to me. So I patrol still to this day, 2 nights a week. I was patrolling last night, so I'm a little bit tired today. So last night, 2 robberies, so we helped people last night. There was a female assaulted. I pulled somebody over and he didn't have a driver's license. He shouldn't have been driving. I could have arrested him. I could have done a lot of things. But what I did instead was have a conversation with them about it. It's just tough times. And the last thing anyone needs right now is their car getting towed and going to jail. Unless it's something violent, don't get me wrong. If they do something crazy, they're going to jail. But we're all humans, right? So the police have a lot of discretion on how they deal with certain matters. And I exercise that discretion because I know what it's like, right? So I helped that person. He told me when I left that traffic stop, he said, I think God put you here to wake me up. That's just how I got back in my cruiser and came back home that morning thinking, I really helped that dude. And I hope he changes his life and makes some better decisions, right? I have multiple careers. I'm a management consultant executive for a firm called Accenture. I'm a military guy. I was a federal agent, lieutenant colonel, in the Air Force for an agency called the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. It's a sister agency for the FBI. I just retired from that last October. My job there was to run field offices from all over the world. Essentially, anything from federal level crime to counterintelligence operations to protective services, you name it. I probably did it or was responsible for agents who did it. Being a federal agent is kind of a cool thing. I was obviously traveling around the world. I ran field offices in Germany, Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., ran a joint task force in East Africa across 10 countries. Operations, in Belgium, Spain, Italy, Luxembourg, a lot of European countries, and pretty much all of East Africa. I stayed in because not only was I helping people, having a major impact on the world, stopping terrorists sometimes, but I was growing as a person because I was experiencing life in a way that most people will never experience. Make sense? Real estate gives me the ability to do the other stuff that I want to do, the purposeful stuff. Because passive income that you can create without having to physically be somewhere creates time. When you have time, you have freedom to do whatever it is that we have passion for, right? So I was volunteering and going all over the world 2 weeks ago. I was in Beirut, Lebanon, volunteering after the blast had happened in the city on August 4th. I started going to Lebanon in November of 2019, and I made a lot of friends there. I've been back 5 times since. I raised almost $20,000 here, brought it back, and donated it to certain causes and things of that nature. How does my work help the common good? Well, listen. In every career field that I'm in, everything is focused around helping people. You, and everybody else. Everybody with a good heart will eventually get to a point in life where you realize that it is not about the money at all. You can't take it with you when you pass away, right? And you can have $30 million in the bank, but if you have no relationships, if you have no purpose, no connections, no impact on the community, what good have you done other than being a Scrooge and sitting in a house on your own? I love Thayer, but when I was at Thayer, there's a school that has a lot of affluence as well, right? You see that and you think, that is what is going to make you happy. And that's just not true at all. Purpose will make you happy, and helping people will make you happy. And you think, COVID is terrible. Nobody wants that stuff around. Hundreds of thousands of people have passed away in this country, including my grandfather. It should have never happened. Period. It's crazy what is going on, but let me just put that aside for 1 second to say, what COVID has done with these times is slowing everybody down. The side effect of it has been, man, does it make you think? And it does make you slow down. And it does make you realize kind of what's important. Nothing is promised. And you know, things have changed, but I think some things have changed for the better. And I hope they don't go back to what they were before.
My name is Samson Lee. I'm actually a class of 1992, Thayer Academy. So I'm very happy to be part of alumni of Thayer Academy. I'm actually a manager of community services, consulting company called Basic IT. We do IT support for primary life science bio from Citrus, from the Boston Bay Area. I'm a manager of 5 engineers. I'm also a senior service engineer of the company, so I deal with other instructional builds as well. So my volunteer work, I've been a long-time member of NAP Boston, which stands for National Association of Asian American Professionals Boston Chapter. The clients that we support are biotech clients for most parts. They're doing research, whether it's cancer research, cell research, or COVID research. I really believe in the mission of our organizations, which is to build leaders in the Asian American community. If you look at the entire United States and the world, well, in some part of the United States, Asian Americans, we're not seeing these leaders, really, see, as lower workers, hardworking, very loyal, it's a stereotype we definitely need to break. When I joined, I was not a leader. I was just kind of doing what I was doing. Took the chance and became the co-director of the committee, and was elevated and voted as vice president and the president for 5 years for the organization. I've been able to help and train various and nurture various leaders, Asian American leaders in Boston area over the over 20 plus years. One program I'm really proud of is NAP Boston's scholarship program. And that's it's a high school student we recommend applying for. We give scholarship to high school seniors going to college. And we're doing this for 30 plus years of experience. And over $200,000 were given out over the years. So it's a very significant award. I've been a proposer for it. And I've been pushing hard, trying to help raising money over the years. That's important for us to advise the current leadership. If you look things at Chinatown, some of the restaurants are closed. They're permanently closed. The family business, the non-institutional businesses, they're wiped out. It's not no longer like before. Busy. Before, 2 or 3 in the morning, we eat after a night out. It's pretty vibrant there, but now by 11 o'clock, it's dead. There are obviously negative changes, since President Trump called it China flu. It's erroneous. It's not. Luckily, we don't have the same racism from what I heard from New York. Asian Americans get attacked and targeted every day just because of what they look like. People of vulnerability, they're not even Chinese. They're Koreans, Japanese. They got attacked because they don't know. Well, they just don't know what's the difference, right? So I think that's very hateful, and we're kind of powerless because we don't have the voice to stand up and to fight back to that. We have representatives and senators who down this. It's just not enough. Not enough. In that sense, it's very depressing for me to hear all the time.
My husband, Terry, founded InterSystems Corporation in 1978, and I joined in 1985. At that time, there were 15 employees, all based in Boston. Now, there are 700 employees in Cambridge, New York, and Virginia, and 1,800 employees in 27 countries. My role at ISC has been to build the core infrastructure of the organization. In the early days, we all wore many hats. That is, we all pitched in when needed. I've held several executive level positions, including Director of Finance, Administration, Marketing, and Documentation. InterSystems provides the data technology that powers electronic and medical record systems, like the VA Vista, Epic, and our own TrackCare, which is sold exclusively outside of the US. We have also made interoperability software that allows clinicians anywhere to access medical records that are held on virtually any system. In the age of COVID, we're all required to maintain social distancing, and visits to the doctor's office are now done virtually. Imagine how important this technology is in helping save people's lives. I'm very proud that I was able to arrange for Dr. Anthony Fauci to introduce the director of the Reagan Institute, Bruce Walker, at ISC's annual conference. The conference this year was virtual, of course, as Dr. Fauci wouldn't have it any other way. We began because Terry had connections with MIT, Harvard, and Mass General, and all three organizations trying to help develop a vaccine for HIV and for AIDS. The thinking was that if we could treat and then eradicate what was then in pre-COVID-19 days perhaps the most difficult of all infectious diseases, then we were likely to learn how to solve a wide range of diseases. And Terry said, "I'd like something where you all work in collaboration." So rather than duplicate work, they were able to work together. We've tackled tuberculosis, which we're making progress because that's also a huge killer of people. You know, it's not eradicated at all. And then there was the Zika virus, and then SARS. Not surprisingly, we are aggressively working on creating a vaccine for COVID-19. So, I was 43 when I ran my first marathon. When I got to 43, I'm like, alright, I'm middle-aged, I need to get out and do more to stay healthy, things that would help develop my body and keep me strong. And I found that I liked running. Not everybody likes running, but I liked it. I then embarked on a long-distance marathon journey, completing 21 Boston marathons, 3 NYC marathons, marathons in Dublin, Berlin, Bermuda, London, Paris, Sydney, Tokyo, and Antarctica. As a result of my completion of the Antarctica Marathon, I hold the title for the oldest female marathoner on the continent at age 69, and the oldest woman to run on 7 continents. While Antarctica was the most special marathon for me, the Boston Marathon is of course my favorite. I've qualified for the Boston Marathon numerous times and have used these opportunities to raise funds for many charities around the world. I also help other runners become eligible to run in all races in which I participate, and then in turn raise additional money for the charities such as Alley Foundation, Children's Hospital Trust, Foundation of Mass Eye and Ear, Joanne Druzy Foundation, and many others. You know, Terry and I were born with many advantages in life, and you know, others were born with none. We were both brought up in families of modest means, but we always had enough. We had natural gifts, and we had opportunities. So this gives us an opportunity to participate, not to just write a check, but to actually be involved in our foundation, be involved in a physical activity. And I think that, you know, sometimes people, a lot of times, people have money, but they don't share it. But, you know, you can't take it with you, and sharing is caring. And as I said, I'm 70 years old now, so I've been doing my athletic stuff for 28 years. But I did other things at a smaller scale. Church and donations and fundraising. I was a Girl Scout selling Girl Scout cookies. So, you know, from a young age, I was always very proactive. And even though you're 70 years old, if your legs can move, get out there and bike. Run, swim, walk, whatever it is. It's going to keep you healthy and young and help you make a difference. It's often said, correctly, that if you touch the life of one person positively, you've done something to make the world a better place.
My name is John Lucas. I'm an actor. I study acting in New York City at the Lee Strasberg Institute for Theater and Film Acting. It's tough. It's definitely hard work. It's grueling emotional work. But never have I come out the other side and thought, man, that wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? You know, I love this work more than anything, just because it gets down to such real truth. You know, not to say that music can't be truthful and not express that same level of openness. All art can do that. But there's something about putting yourself literally in the shoes of somebody else and feeling their life and their pain and their joy and everything. Yeah. The lessons that acting has taught me is the usefulness. The usefulness of me. You know, as an actor, I feel like we tend to doubt ourselves more than a lot of other people, or we're pretty open to admit that we don't believe in ourselves. And a lot of my work has taught me, like, you are enough for what you have to do in this moment, even the bad sides of you. And the bad things that have happened to you in your life are usable. And you can channel that for good. You know what I mean? Like, every single second, I appreciate deeper now, in every sense, because of acting. Because I know that everything that I do in my life can be used for my work. And I think that's just the greatest gift that acting could have given me. I would say being in New York City was the real impetus for me to make a vocal, active change. I had gone so long without doing it that I knew I was just like, why? It was almost like I was pissed at myself. I was like, why has it taken this long? Why? We're facing that, you know, privilege, the only word there is for it, not recognizing that until it's right in your face, being like, wow, now you are awake. You can't be here anymore. You can't go back. You can't go back from here. You have to question comfort. And what was deemed as comfortable to me before is like, I'm ashamed of it. For lack of a better term, unacceptable. You know what I mean? In the beginning of the quarantine, you know, we were all stuck in place, sheltering in place. I think quarantine, while it definitely has been difficult, has been a stepping stone in perspective. You know what I mean? Art is about looking through various lenses, and I feel like quarantine made us all look through a bunch of different lenses because we were all so sick of looking through our own. So, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, these instances scream louder than ever because we just have more time to sit and think and look at these videos, these concrete evidences of atrocities. And it just festers and builds and builds and builds. And it, you know, everything that is happening right now in America is a result, a culmination of years of systemic white supremacy and just hatred, ignorance and hatred. And people are, they can't just sit any longer. You know, they need to do something. When the Black Lives Matter rally rolled around in Boston, we had seen everything that had gone on across the country with, you know, protests turning into riots because of police agitation. And we knew what could happen. And we still wanted to be there because it's the right thing. It's just doing the right thing. I'd like to say I have faith in people. I would like to, you know, I would like to hope that just general goodwill towards other people prevails in the end. It's going to be hard. I know that. But it's mostly just the hope. I think it's going to take time to... It's a very generational thing to weed out.
I feel like the biggest issue is just sort of like blind complacency. Yeah, I feel like, and I'm not saying that I'm, some social justice warrior because I went to one protest. And if you want to use that exact line, I would encourage you to, because I think it's very poignant. I feel like in most cases, once a person is exposed to the truth, like it takes a particular type to continue supporting otherwise. You know what I mean? Right? I think what inspired me to go was like, once you know, I don't understand how a person cannot feel compelled to go. The real kicker for me is that I don't know why it took until I was 19 years old to learn that there are more people incarcerated in America for marijuana-related crimes than there are for all murders, violent crimes, robberies, and rapes combined. Yeah, and once I learned that, I was like, why are all these idiots sitting around talking about criminal justice reform? It's pretty clear what the issue is, and it's pretty clear why the forces that be want to keep it that way, because the marijuana laws target black people. And it's very, very clear. Like, the racist greatest tool is the ignorance of the masses. I feel like a lot of people these days are feeling like guilty or whatever. Oh, I haven't posted something on my Instagram. I haven't gone to a protest. But it's like, it's never, ever, ever too late to just jump in and start with very simple things. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like being consistently aware and listening to voices of people that speak on behalf of oppressed communities. I don't know, it was almost like cliche that the police immediately showed up and started driving cars through people, and if you want, a direct account of the whole thing, I just refer you to the piece. But I wanted to make it very, very clear who escalated the situation, who instigated the situation, who, started blowing up tensions and attacking people. And it was the police. And honestly, standing there, surrounded by terror and chaos that spawned from a crowd that was up to that point, one of the happiest, most unified, strongest groups of people I've ever stood with. You know what I mean? And on a dime, the police show up and immediately turn all that to fear. And people are running and screaming, and everyone has seen the videos on TV. People should keep in mind that these are all global movements. Go take a look at what's happening in Nigeria, or take a look at what's happening in the Philippines and Hong Kong, all over the place. Yeah, all over the place there are people rising up and getting beaten by police. And that's why this abolish the police movement has started, because people are saying, okay, in every single case, when you have a body of people that has allowed violence as a means by which to assert itself over a mass of people, then that power inherently corrupts that body every single time.
I'm the Youth Leadership Development Director at Truth Initiative. Truth Initiative is a national nonprofit organization that works to shape a culture where young people reject tobacco. I'm at the intersection of people and policy, so I get to work with young people. I enjoy the fact that I can kind of mold them and that you are very influential in their lives, while also working on an issue that affects them long term. So I love my job. With the organization, we focus a lot on marketing. You may have seen some of our commercials about vaping, or even throwback to the body bags. Sometimes use scary images or expose the history of big tobacco, anything to get the word out. But My job specifically, I get to inform young people about those harms and give them the tools of advocacy to really fight against big tobacco. I think being able to empower them and use their voice in an issue that affects them is extremely important. They're the future of our society, and one day they'll be developing policies in these areas. So any young people that I can bring awareness to is one person in the future that can potentially prevent it. You get to know them. Not being able to physically meet with them has been super challenging. I sometimes worry about them in the stress of the pandemic, that they're becoming anxious, or if it's causing them to vape just because, they're having anxiety or stress. So I worry they're using it as a stress reliever, as everyone is struggling with the challenges of the pandemic. When I joined the organization, they asked me why fighting against tobacco was so important to me. My mom, when she was a teenager, she lived in a poor, low-income housing project in Boston, and a corporation would actually come and give them cigarettes. So that was how she originally got addicted. And so, we just put out a commercial and some social media content this week about how big tobacco executives have said, we don't smoke tobacco, we market it to the poor, the black, the uninformed. Essentially, there's a lot of targeting practices that my mom was affected by. And we've all known people that have suffered from lung cancer or some indirect type of disease from smoking tobacco. It directly affects my family. The mission is important to continue improving the lives of other black people, other young people, other targeted minorities, so it's really important to me. I was also able to put on our first National Day of Action. We were kind of able to reach over 60,000 people across the country. And I brought about 50 young people to DC to rally in front of Juul's headquarters and kind of just protest the practices of Juul and vaping and just share their voice on this topic. When I was hired about 2 years ago, I kind of just did an audit where we were, what we needed to happen, and so I produced some program plans and couldn't believe we hadn't already been doing a day of action. We focus on advocacy and mobilizing young people, so I was surprised to find out we hadn't nationally mobilized. So that was just an idea that I put into my proposals and then kind of just cultivated and executed it. We have some celebrities work on our projects. I got to have lunch with President Obama. It was me and 4 other people. One of my favorite memories. I was working on the Affordable Care Act, enrolling young people into Obamacare essentially, and the White House called my organization and they said they wanted to talk to someone who's been working directly on Obamacare, but they didn't say why. I met them at a cupcake shop and they were like, oh, actually the president wants to say thank you. I was like, the president of what? So he took us to lunch to say thank you. We talked about pop culture, talked about Beyonce. That was great. I am passionate about equity, passionate about social justice, passionate about black people occupying spaces equally. Even recently with THAIR, I've been involved with some of the diversity work, and it goes throughout its work, school, personal life, etc. There is always room for diversity and inclusion, so I am passionate about that. I think back to my days at THAIR, when I was in the middle school, I was one of 2 black students in the entire class. And so recently over the summer, and hearing from the different black students and some of the pain and things that we went through, I am passionate about changing that narrative for people that look like me. To the kids at THAIR, I would say, take up the space, be curious, do all the things that you're passionate in. Oftentimes it's easy to be pigeonholed, put in boxes, allow others to put you in a specific lane. But if you have interests, pursue them. Be your authentic self, and don't let anyone disrupt that.
I am a creative producer at Arts Emerson, and I am establishing director of the Boston Asian American Film Festival. And I'm the mom of 2. So, part of my job is running the Boston Asian American Film Festival, and we are in our 12th year, which is about a year older than my daughter, my oldest child. And when people hear me talk about it, I actually have 3 children. I have my film festival, which is my oldest child, a daughter and a son, who is just a little bit younger than that. One of the things about the Asian American community is there is still a huge sense of invisibility. How much do they feel like they're important and valued enough to be considered and taken care of? And I feel like the work that I'm doing through the film festivals, specifically the use of arts and culture, has really been able to elevate the community, to help them find the space that they need
that may not have existed otherwise. I think that's something I've consistently heard. People are just taken aback about how important it is having this space, being able to gather and watch the type of films that we present about social justice. You know? Diverse and intersectional stories about the Asian American experience. And I think there's still a huge confusion about, Asians being the perpetual foreigner or being the model minority. And those are a lot of things that, through our programming, we try to address. It's not just about showing a film, but it's really also about the conversations that we can have around them. And how can those conversations be rooted and connected to actual communities that are doing the work 365 days a year? I recognize our film festival only exists over a weekend, but for many people, the people who are actually working in nonprofit organizations, this is their daily work. And so, how can we help amplify what those groups are doing? The pandemic has been challenging because, so much of the type of work that I do is about gathering people. The purpose of my work is about building community, and so much about building community is about the connections between people in that community. And when you can't gather, it makes it really hard to figure out how is it exactly that you're actually building community when you can't actually put people in the same room anymore. And we're not only facing issues related to the pandemic, but also in our individual lives. Going to the grocery store and feeling just hearing the daily struggles, just walking down the street and being called, hey, come flu, and just feeling this extra level of harassment because of the way that you look has also just caused anxiety. Been stressful, trying to figure out how can you help when people are feeling so isolated. When I got to maybe middle school, I wanted to be Oprah Winfrey. I wanted to be a talk show host. I just loved watching Oprah Winfrey. And I thought the topics that she covered and the way that she was able to connect people was amazing. And I wanted to do that. And it's actually something I feel there's part of my work now that I do get to actually do that, which I'm just realizing as I'm talking to you now.
If I could have been what I could have been, I could have been something. If what I could be had been left to me, I would have been something. A tower of strength, a center of power, at $10 an hour.
If I could have done what I could have done, I could have done big things.
With some luck to do what I wanted to, I would have done big things.
Swam a few rivers,
Climbed a few hills,
paid all my bills.
now it's just dreams that I'm stuck with. And hell, it ain't a lot to show.
I haven't gone far from the starting line.
I could have been something. I could have been someone. The top of the team. I could have been someone. A long way from here. But I could have been the top of the team. I could have been someone special. The top of the team. Granddad was a sailor, and he blew in of the water. My father was a farmer, and I his only daughter. I took up with a no-good mill-working man from Massachusetts, who died from too much whiskey, and leaves me these three faces to feed. Mill work ain't easy, mill work ain't hard. Mill work most often is a goddamn awful boring job, and I'm waiting for a daydream to take me through the morning and put me in my coffee break so I can have my sandwich and remember it's me and my machine for the rest of the morning, for the rest of the afternoon, and the rest of my life. My mind begins to wander to the days back on the farm, and I can see my father smiling at me, swinging on his arm, and I can hear my granddad's stories of the storms out on Lake Erie, where vessels and cargoes, fortunes and sailors' lives were lost. It's my life life that's been wasted, and I have been a fool to let this manufacturer use my body for a tool. I get to ride home in the evening, staring at my hands, swearing by my sorrow that a young girl ought to stand a better chance. So may I work this mill just as long as I am able, and never meet the man whose name is on the label. It's me and my machine for the rest of the morning, for the rest of the afternoon, oh, and the rest of my life.
In our final chapter, we bring you the stories of those ordinary people, our friends and families, whose small acts of kindness and courage shape our daily lives. These are the people close to us who are striving to help in the pandemic as best they can. In particular, 2020 has been a year of unimaginable horrors for our frontline healthcare workers. My Uncle Jay is an ICU nurse at Rhode Island Hospital. He's never one to complain, so we had no idea how profound his work had been until my aunt shared some of his stories. She told us that he's often the last face COVID patients see before they pass, and he has to communicate with grieving families. The impact of all that he has seen will shape him for a lifetime to come. He is one of many frontline workers whose sacrifices will be long remembered. Thank you, Uncle Jay, and to all of our essential workers who kept our society spinning. I know it's not much, but good job.
Everyone needs to eat, like my mother always said. So I think we provide that service for people in hopefully an enjoyable, friendly atmosphere. I mean, we try to run our store like a corner store. Most of the people that shop with us are here day in and day out. We have a really good relationship with our customer base. Most of them are friends and family and neighbors, so it's not only providing nourishment, but also another way to bond and socialize and meet up. What has been most difficult about the pandemic? That's a very difficult question to answer. There's been a great many challenges for us, like the rest of the world, but I think just trying to navigate, especially during the height of the pandemic, just navigate the employee and customer safety, and trying to figure out how to do that when really no one knew what this virus was all about, what was the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, and to try to navigate that in real time was very difficult. It's much easier now because I think we have a much better handle on how the virus spreads and we can do to minimize that spread. But up until, a few months ago, that was a big challenge and a big concern for our staff and for our customers, for myself. During the height of COVID, it was insane. About 2.5 months, I was working every day, open to close, so I didn't see my family much at all for that time. So that was challenging and a little bit stressful. At the beginning, when we first started, we started limiting customers before most stores, and we started mandating masks before most stores. At the beginning, it was a little more challenging because it was new to everyone, and some people didn't have masks at all. And they came to the store, and we'd have to turn them away. Things like that. So that was a bit more challenging, but most people were fairly cooperative, and we'd allow them in the store. By and large, people have been very cooperative. It's a family business. I'm very fortunate in that my kids both work at the store, so it's actually brought us closer together. We've been spending more time together at home like everyone else, so they really enjoy being at work. So I see two different sides of both my children, which has been really nice, and I think that for a lot of families, that has been one of the upsides. It's kind of brought us closer together. I want to be able to provide for my family, but also to... I grew up in the community I serve, so I feel like I have an obligation to my friends, my family, my neighbors, to do the best that I can for them. You know, I'm one of those people who never wants to let anyone down. So I want to make sure that their experience in our stores is as positive as it can be. We do the best we can to provide for them.
So, I've been a Pilates instructor for about 18 years now, and the most important thing to me is seeing a client's mobility and strength and confidence in what their bodies can do, and just instilling that. I'm just like a guide here. I'm just suggesting these exercises to make your body stronger and more flexible and get that sweatiness on. So my studio has been closed since March. I'm trying to think if we held on longer than you guys did. Definitely not. So we all closed up at the same time. You guys, us guys, we all closed at the same time. And truthfully, my studio has not opened again. We are seeing very small groups in the space that I work at. The space that I work at is it's in this old, beautiful building. And because it's an old, beautiful building, it's not a great space to work out in. It's not a great space to be in COVID. The windows are funky, the ventilation doesn't exist, the room sizes are enormous. So we can be inside, but the ventilation, So I've been seeing my clients, we got creative, my clients and I. They reached out to me, and actually they were like, let's work out in our backyards. And so we've just been meeting in very small groups in various people's backyards. I'd be like, Amanda, you organize a group of your gal pals, or guy pals, we'll meet in your backyard, and you organize it, and I'll just show up and do it. That's how I do it. The disappointment is that the studio owner and the landlord that I work for, and who she rents from, have not gotten their acts together to make this space so that, because, this whole dreamy is going to come to an end. December is going to be below 35, and we're not going to be able to do this outside. So it would be nice, and it's not my business to demand these things. Like, it's not my actual business, and it's not my business, You know what I mean? And if I would like them to, for instance, it wouldn't be hard to get one studio. The windows don't work. So get the windows to work. Get a carpenter in there and make the windows work. It's not that hard. Get a handyman in and make the windows work so that they can open and close. Now all of a sudden we have a studio with ventilation. And so it's kind of maddening to me that, I see them, that the day I was there, I was like, there's no way I'm doing this in January in here because I can open one small window. No way. So much like all gyms. Gyms are not, no matter how you try, they are journey places. So, under the best circumstances, movie theaters are gross. Like airplanes, still kind of gross. Gyms, still kind of gross. So yeah, it definitely highlights because you're like, oh, kind of gross, but I'm not gonna, maybe I'll get a common cold from that. These common spaces that we're sharing, or how people, oh my gosh. People always come to the studio with their boxes of tissues. Oh, I just took 1,000 Dayquils and I'm gonna have to work out now. No! Can you just not? How about you go home? Gyms and things, they were always germy to begin with, but now there's this super germ out there that I personally am not a fan of. Somewhat terrified of. So I believe strongly in getting sweaty and moving your body on the daily. And so that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Because I can be that harassing mom that's like, hey, you've been laying in your bed all day. It is time to not lay in your bed anymore and get outside and do your thing and get on, do something. Find a soul cycle class, get out there, do something. You have to do something. So that's a benefit and not a benefit to have a mom harassing you that way. Like I said, you come with your body, its aches and pains and your emotional aches and pains. And after that session, you have clarity. That issue that loomed large, maybe will loom less large. A lot a lot of like Pilates doesn't have that same yogic spirituality to it, but I do say to my clients, like, think of this moment as a meditation. Like we do long planks, long, steady planks. You just get into the planks and stay there for, well, until I tell you that you're done. It's long sometimes, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. So it's awful. But at the same time, I wouldn't ask you to do it if I didn't know you were strong enough to do it. I know like people's doubts outweigh what they can actually do. So I just say like, make it a meditation. Just breathe, inhaling and exhaling, always cueing the breath. And I feel like the movement of breath moves all of the muscles and the blood through your body. But it also moves those moods and that moment, those doubts, those moments of lack of confidence. It just moves it out of the body. And you know, this kind of sounds kind of hokey, but it kind of offers it up into the world. And then if you're with a group, you can just look over at the woman next to you, and she's killing it, and you're killing it, and you just all feel better afterwards. And you've accomplished something, you've pushed yourself to a limit. It sounds kind of silly and hokey, but it's like, it just happens. Like, I wouldn't say if it didn't happen, you know? I have 3 fabulous kids, pretty happy about them. My husband, my dog. So I was training for my first marathon. I just turned 50 and I wanted to run a marathon before my 50th. And I'm still super sad that it was canceled. And I'm super proud of the fact that I didn't try to do it on my own. Like, they're like, oh, run it virtually. And I was like, nope, not doing that. Not gonna go. So like, cause it'll be like a 5.5 hour marathon. So like, it's long, right? So I'm like, I have no interest in doing that on my own. So I'm proud of myself for not doing that. I let go of a goal. That was a big deal. So I'll tell you something interesting. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, when she wasn't feeling well, she did her work. And there's not a lot of grown-ups in the world that will say, I'm, having my umpteenth round of whatever the heck, terrible cancer treatment, and still want to go to their jobs. I have to say that as long as I was physically able to teach Pilates and design old houses, I totally would. I would. Okay, so this is gonna sound kind of mean, but I love when people complain about what I'm asking them to do, and then I kind of tell them to shush. Like, my client yesterday is a long-time client, and I've known him for a long time, and he was definitely ready to be like, no. And I'm like, Chickadee, it's adorable that you think I'm asking you. Like, just do it. I'm not looking for input here. Like, just do it. So I love that I can be sassy like that with my clients, because I'm not really like, I know they can do it. So leave your doubt at the door and freaking do what I'm asking you to do.
I appreciate you actually reaching out to me to find out what my career consists of. I think it's funny that someone would want to find out what the life looks like in a custodial staff member. I'm a senior custodian, right? So it's my responsibility to maintain my schools. The most important part of my job is to keep everybody safe. In these times of COVID, yes, but also at any time, actually. You can keep people from being sick at any time, you know? I'm there for the kids to make sure that they have a safe and clean environment to learn in. The people, they trust me. I feel that the school itself, since I've been there, has been the cleanest it's ever been, and the best upkeep it's ever been since the building was built in 2007. I've measured every classroom 6 feet apart and 3 feet apart for the desks to keep the kids safe. Policies going forward with the pandemic have changed tremendously. At the school since the start, I did a lot over the summer. I had to try a program called the ESY program, which is a summer program for the kids with disabilities. So I had the whole school district that was in my school during the pandemic. And through the whole summer, we didn't have one person that caught COVID. So that was one of the things that was a trial to see what we would do coming up in September, to see if we would either do hybrid or not going forward. I'm actually a very friendly individual. I'm a people person. I have 80 teachers and I have 40 aides that work in the school system with me. Then I have 2 principals and 2 administrators. So I think it's just, I enjoy going to work every day to these people. I enjoy going in and trying to make their day a better day by whatever means necessary. So I'm well known throughout the town. All the kids know me, and you will be amazed how they feel towards me. And when they see me outside of school, it shows me the confidence that I'm doing the right thing in school.
I'm a product manager at Google. That has a very specific definition within the field of internet software or software in general. It's kind of an entrepreneurial role. So I work with artists, I work with lawyers, I work with salespeople, I work with mathematicians, engineers, statisticians, and we, in my case, design features for Google's travel and search products. So like flights and hotels. I'm the one that's holding the vision. I'm the one is the only one that really knows the whole thing and is there to sort of just be like the masthead on the ship saying, we're going this way, storms be damned. I love my job. It's very difficult and very overwhelming, but I love it nonetheless. I kind of call it riding the dragon, because I feel like it's very exciting and very intimidating, and you kind of think you're gonna fall off to your death at any moment. I just work with a lot of really smart people. I like to be the kind of person that's the smallest fish in the biggest pond, trying to swim with the big fish. So to work at a place like Google is a huge honor. But during the pandemic, I missed the camaraderie of the office. I missed the energy of the office. I missed being able to put that hat on, wear that hat all day, and take it off. Though I would have to say that my job hat, basically is a sleeping cat version of the same hat. But at least being in the office, you're in office brain and your work brain. You can focus completely on that, and it's a lot easier, and I could get done in 10 minutes what takes me hours now, because in the office I could make the rounds of the floor and talk to everyone and catch up on everything. But now there are one-on-one meetings and times on the calendar, and it's just very different and feels more cumbersome. I just miss that exciting human quality of a bunch of really smart people being in the same room, hashing out an idea. It's very creative. I do a lot of creative projects, and so it lends itself very well to that, because I've musically directed shows and done other big creative projects. I've wrote musicals where you have to get people excited and marshal the troops and be the one that's leading the direction. I like having an idea of the thing that you want to do, and you jump through all the hoops, and you get everyone to okay it, and then you have a breath of okay, now there's this is where we really get to grind on this. It involves getting everyone together, figuring out who's gonna do what, how it's all gonna happen, and inevitably 100 different new things come up. Questions to answer, ideas to pursue, and I feel like it's that perfect nexus of confidence in the idea and the possibility of the future and the excitement of the fruition of the idea. And it doesn't feel the same if it's not qualified. We figured it out and this is it. And then you get the okay. Let's party. I compose, so yeah, I write music and I've written code. and I feel like they're both based on similar principles. You have a rule set, you have a certain set of restrictions. In the case of programming, it's if-then statements. And in the case of music, it's notes and chords and scales and such. And then, what you try to do within that simple rule set is to create something elegant, efficient, effective in its own medium. In code, it's the perfect app that helps you do something without thinking, and just works great every time. And in music, it's a symphony. So I feel like there are different ways to express yourself through this weird kind of analytical rule set. It's very left brain, right brain together. So I use that kind of thinking in my job all the time. I also feel like a place like Google, which is such a big, omnivorous blob of a company, and has this far reach and has done so much good, but is also sort of like, you know, focus of a lot of scrutiny. I think that scrutiny is good. I think that any large influential company needs to be very transparent. So I'm a firm believer in all of that scrutiny, but I want to be one of the good guys. I do want to feel like I'm helping make positive change and to kind of live by a standard and work by a standard and make statements when they matter and make moves when they matter. In this place, it's really like a melting pot of all these different thoughts and ideas, and yeah, helps billions of people every day.
I'm a psychotherapist and I love what I do. I absolutely love being a part in people's journeys to get better. Okay, so from the beginning, I started working at my old home in Millis, and basically I work with women, only women actually. The same women have been coming to me for years and years, and I love it. I built so many good relationships with my patients. There were a lot of changes with the pandemic. I had to switch my clients to telemedicine, and so many things were going on. My kids were also at home since the schools all shut down, so I had a huge rise in my caseload because people had trouble with the pandemic, which makes sense, of course. Eventually, it got better for me once we got more used to being at home. There's for sure a difference between being in person versus online, but it was a learning curve. Unfortunately, it was fatiguing from looking at a screen all day. It's also harder because, you can't really tell body language on a screen, right? Because you can only see part of them. But eventually, I got used to my job online, so I became more tuned into facial expressions. I tended to get a lot of frontline workers that were new patients for me. I completely understand why, though. They were dealing with devastation and trauma from work. I would even talk to the frontline doctors and nurses from their cars because that's where they had space. It was so difficult because a lot of frontline workers had to isolate themselves from even their own families. So, understandingly, they were lonely. I tried to hold space for my clients, but I was incredibly busy. More and more new people were coming in that I had to stop accepting new patients. Originally, I wanted to be a doctor to help people. However, then I didn't want to go to medical school for so long, and blood and stuff wasn't really my thing. My dad was actually a heavy drinker, so my childhood was rough. I had a tough childhood. When I was in college, I went through 3 different college majors because I couldn't really decide what to do. In my heart, though, I knew I wanted to be a part of a healing profession to contribute to and help others in their journeys. I love to paint and heal through arts. I'm not the traditional healing space, but I like to have different ways to be able to help my patients. I absolutely love to paint, so sometimes I use that to help my patients. I personally love to work with acrylics and paint. I love to paint all types of women figures and goddesses, so you'll find many pictures around my house. It's so funny because when my kids have friends over, their friends will say, "Why do you have so many naked pictures around?" I love to empower women like I do in my job, because it helps people to find a sense of themselves and also it raises feminism. I'm not really a person who gets awards, but my job is rewarding itself. I am a mom and I'm particularly proud of my kids' accomplishments. I just want my kids to be confident and have a sense of self. They were really helpful in taking care of my mom because my mom has cancer. So she lives nearby us, and especially during COVID, they've been super careful, even missing time with their friends to be able to see their grandmother, which I thought was incredibly sweet. I also am immunocompromised with health issues as well, so my kids have been super careful, which is amazing. All I really want is for my kids to be happy.
I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I treat people with all sorts of disorders.
And everything from depression to anxiety to bipolar disorders to panic and OCD. And I think what's important is access to care and making sure that people who need support get it. The pandemic has caused a lot of people to experience a lot of stress, and so we're jammed. Our practice is like overflowing, and I think it's more important than ever that people start to think about mental health, not just physical health. We have a lot of strategies to deal with the pandemic, like washing your hands and social distancing, but we're just starting to think about what to do for people's mental health. So it's been a challenge. I'm trying to provide access to care for lots of people. I think it's really unfortunate that right now, during this pandemic, it kind of highlights inequities in our world. And so as a provider, one thing I try to do is to work for the common good and make sure people have access to care and do what I can to minimize those inequalities. My schedule is busier than it's ever been because of the increase in demand on mental health providers. And I think that in a lot of ways, the pandemic has destigmatized mental health. So, everyone feels stressed from this, and it's okay to go ask for help. I mean, who wouldn't be stressed in the middle of a pandemic? So, that's a good thing, because that means a lot of people who might not otherwise ask for help have knocked on my door, but it's a time-consuming thing. I'm passionate about helping shift people's perspectives and passionate about teaching. I really love teaching people that they can make changes. And I see people make changes all the time, so I'm really optimistic that it's possible to make changes. I'm really passionate about gratitude. I think it's really important to, express what we're grateful for, and I think that goes a long way towards helping people improve their mental health. Taking some time to realize what their successes are and what they're grateful for. I'm really proud I've been able to forge these relationships with people who I might not have met otherwise, and I kind of noticed because I'm leaving one practice, a group where I've been for 18 years, and I'm concentrating just on my practice. So as I am wrapping up with these people, I realize how much it meant to each of these patients. And I'm proud that I was able to forge relationships with these people who from like all walks of life, all types of people who I remember walking and saying, I didn't really trust you to begin with, or I wasn't really sure, I didn't want to come here, and then even when I got here I wasn't really sure, but you didn't judge me. Nope. It's a privilege to get to hear people's stories. People from all different kinds of cultures and places, because mental health issues really cut across all lines. I'm an EMT, medical worker, so I like it. It's extremely stressful, especially with the virus. It's a lot of hard work. You're on your feet constantly, and a lot of people don't really appreciate the fact that you don't get to go home and take a break from what you see all day. You carry everyone's stories with you all the time. It's changed a lot since the pandemic, especially in terms of policy. Before we could kind of, I wouldn't say get away with things, but I would say get away with things. We could kind of help the nurses out more, but now it's more extremely strict in the way we have to do our job exactly to the book, or else, there's just so much risk of exposure. EMTs are important, but I think the real heroes, people are always oh my god, you guys are so important. Yeah, sure, but the real heroes are the nurses and the doctors and the hospital staff who are constantly, their shifts, I work 8-hour shifts, they work 12-hour shifts. They're constantly at the hospital. They're in the thick of it, taking care of these patients. Management sucks here, but I think you find that with every job.
I just switched jobs, like the same position, but like different company. And it was because my old job was like, we can't afford to give you PPE. And I was like, yes, you can. You can. One of my old coworkers died, not of COVID, but he was in a car accident and he died. And his family works at the hospital that I work at. And they donated like a ton of Adams money to the hospital to give the EMTs proper PPE. And the hospital used the money for something else. And they were like, we're not gonna give you PPE. We had to go out and buy our own masks. And this was the beginning of the pandemic when nobody could find any masks anywhere. And we were like, this is stupid. And that's why I switched my job. I work nights, so I go to work, start getting ready for work at like 3:30ish, and I leave for work at 4, and I get there at 4:45, and my shift starts at 5. I like to be there early, so I know what I'm doing, and I work until, depends on the night. Some nights I'll work all night, sometimes I work until 5 the next morning. I'm also trained in like different things, so I can work in the ER and just run around and start a bunch of IVs for the nurses and like hang medication or like hang bags of IV drip, or they can have me go and do accident patrol or whatever. Depends on the night. Then I get up and do homework all day or school all day. I take 7 classes, so 2 comm classes, American history, American studies, and then chemistry with a lab, anatomy and physiology with a lab, and medical terminology. And then I find time for family and cooking and my girlfriend, who she also works at the same hospital I do, but we don't see each other because she works days and I work nights, and we barely pass each other. Sometimes we see each other on the road, which is funny. Like we'll drive past each other and then she'll call and I'll be like, hey, I just saw you. And she'll be like, yeah, I know, I waved to you, you didn't see me. And I'll be like, yeah, I just saw the back of your car. So that's tough because it's like, you kind of just have to squeeze in those things. I hate being like braggy, but we both are like straight A students and we work super hard on school. So like, it's kind of our first priority in terms of like schoolwork will always come first for us. I do wear a mask in my house, and I think that's a little hard for my family to see because they don't particularly like that, and they understand it, but it's like, it's hard for them. My family's very tight-knit, and I think it's hard for them to see how dangerous it really is. And it's scary for them to know that, I'm in contact with these people all the time. My dad's really sick. He has cancer. So, I don't get to see him a lot because, and like, I have a brother who has type 1 diabetes. My mom has COPD. So if I don't wear a mask in my house, I risk like getting my family really sick. So like, I try not to bring home the horror stories. I don't tell anyone stories from work at home. I change in the garage when I come home, and I try to separate my work a lot from my home life. But it's definitely hard for them. The masks, it's a very physical thing, and like they see that and like, no, okay, I have to stay away from you, Someday I want to work in like surgery or orthopedics, maybe working with trans kids who are getting their top surgery. I think that would be a really cool job. I just remember how kind the nurses were when I got mine, and I was like, oh my god, this might be the best job ever. Because first of all, you never see male nurses. I mean, male nurses are pretty rare, and I think there are a lot of transmasculine young adults and even older adults getting top surgery, and I think maybe a male nurse to connect with might better that experience. Not that ever having female nurses would be a bad thing, but like it brings down that experience to an actual level, because someone who's already had it, who knows what going through that experience is like, they could help them connect or like bring down the fear level a little bit. I try my best, and I try to do what I can for every patient, no matter what. When I first started as an EMT, I had a patient who I brought up to a floor or whatever, and he was like, hey, can I have some chocolate milk? And I was like, absolutely. And I went and got chocolate milk, and I got sidetracked, and like an hour and a half later, I was like, oh, damn, I forgot the chocolate milk for him. And I went back upstairs, and he was dead. And it was like, I went to his nurse, and I was like, what happened? And she was like, yeah, it wasn't anything that he just had a heart condition, he just died. And I was like, should have got him the stupid chocolate milk.
I try to go the extra mile for every single patient that I have because, like, I can get that extra little thing for them to make them happy. 9 times out of 10, a patient, when they're sick or in pain, they're gonna be angry, they're gonna be mad at you, they're gonna wanna spit in your face and like be belligerent. And a lot of the time my patients are drug addicts, a lot of time my patients are criminals, a lot of time my patients are people who just don't have their life together, you know? And that's okay, like, I understand, it's okay, it's not, you know, I'm just here to help you, but, you know, what can I do to make your day a little better, you know what I mean? I think just like being a good person and a kind person and taking care of those around you is a bigger accomplishment than any award that someone can give you, because at the end of the day, that's what affects people the most, is taking care of others.
I always did want to be a doctor. So my grandfather was a doctor. He worked in Holliston, Mass. He was sort of a general practitioner at the time. You do a little everything. You delivered babies, cured heart attacks, and everything. He took out my father's tonsils on the kitchen table. And you know, he graduated from med school in 1912, practiced right through the Great Depression when he would be, you know, paid a dozen eggs and so forth instead of money. He passed away before I was born, and I always had this image of him through stories from my dad about what he was like. And I sort of wanted to do that. So I like science, I like math, and it seemed to be something I always, you know, was attracted to. And then through a variety of experiences, I was hurt when I was in high school and sort of wanted to be like the doctors who took care of me. I grew up wanting to be a doctor since, you know, I can remember what I wanted to be. I think it all comes down to individual relationships. So it's more that you're having an opportunity to help one single person, those few different people who you can help in some certain way. Sometimes, you know, it's diagnosing a cancer and helping them get through that. And then there's doing an operation and getting them the chance to be cured. And sometimes it's having someone who's just, they're terrified of their cancer and you're teaching them about that. And sometimes it's just having someone who has an advanced cancer and just helping them through that, because you're not going to be giving an operation, not necessarily curing the disease, but helping them through that process. And sometimes that's just as valuable. And so it's always at an individual level, you know, that their family is so dependent on you to do the best job possible and give them the best information and to be the most up to date. And so it's always that patient, you know, who's on the other end of what you're doing that motivates you to be your best. With COVID, it's different. Like, it makes it hard to come in. If you have, you know, someone with a new cancer during this time, if they come in previously, they're with a family member or a friend, it's always better. It's so important for them to have someone to listen to the answers and to, you know, it would also fill in a lot of blanks, and patients are terrified. So it's important to have that support. And so now, it's really hard to get someone to come in with you because of restrictions with visitation. So we use remote visits a lot more, and it's always interesting because so much of what you do is interpersonal with the patient and trying to form a bond, and not only learning about your diagnosis and teaching them about the diagnosis, but learning what's important to them. Half of my patients are not really sort of fast internet users, right? So we'll be, you know, 10 minutes into a 45-minute visit and I'm still saying, can you move the camera? I can't see your head. Something like that. Oh, my internet went out. That sort of stuff happens, and it's a new set of challenges for me. I love doing surgery. I love doing a well-planned operation, having the experience of decades of doing it and feeling that I'm doing something that's just really hard and having it go perfect. That's an absolute rush. I love doing it. Using robotics or doing some technique, we're constantly modifying them to make it better and easier and safer for patients. And then using the technology and thinking there's no way we could have done this years ago. That's really fun. I love teaching. So I always have the residents around, and they're just super smart, you know? There's these people who are just graduated from med school and they're trained to do surgery, and they're such a fun group of people, and they're incredibly smart and dedicated. And it's really fun to be around them, and that it makes you feel young. You're always, you know, you're always learning from them as well.
I'm a registered nurse in critical care. I work with the underserved a lot. I've always worked in urban hospitals, in particular here in Oakland, California. You know, it's a county facility with not a lot of resources, so I feel good just being able to give quality care to people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it. I think in critical care we are involved in the most vulnerable parts of people's lives. But the most difficult part of my job during the pandemic has been being the sole person at their bedside when they're dying. As much as I love being a part of the end of life with the families and helping these families not be afraid when their loved one's dying and easing their loved one into death, but like now they can't see that, they can't witness them. It's sometimes hard for them to grasp that their loved one is so sick because they can't visit. But yeah, when I see that a patient is getting suboptimal care, because you know we as nurses are under the direction of physicians, and I'm there 12 hours a day. The physicians come in maybe 5-10 minutes a day. You can only direct them so far, but we can't make them write orders. So when I see that a patient is not being adequately cared for, it's a real challenge for me. You know, I've been in nursing for 27 years now, so I've seen a lot, and I've experienced a lot. And sometimes you have these baby doctors that come in and, you know, they don't have as much experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to help guide them through their career, but sometimes they come out of med school and residency thinking that they know it all, and it's it's kind of hard. But you know, those that are humbled are able to take directions from nurses. You know, they'll go a long way, I think. You know, I just think, you know, when I started doing COVID, you know, 800 people a day were dying, and I was like, I can help in this pandemic, you know, maybe I could. I have the skill set. And when I first got there, New York was so bad. Like, people were so sick, but I was like, I'm gonna help. And then after getting there, it gets discouraging. I was like, what am I doing here? Everyone's just dying from this virus. 67% of my patients died. But it was that 33% that I was there for, that I could save, that I could help. I went to New York, and then I went to Arizona. Yeah, you know, we gotta help people, and we gotta get a handle on this, right? So we do what we were trained to do, to just go. It's like going out to war, you know? Like, you wanna do good, and you don't really know what you're walking into. And it was pretty chaotic at first, you know? I went the first week of April, and there was so much unknowns. And am I walking into my death? You know, are they gonna have PP for me? I literally traveled trash bags in my suitcase because I was like, I don't know if they're gonna be able to protect me, but I am sure as hell going to protect myself, so I don't have a family, so it was easy for me. I didn't feel like I would be putting anyone at risk, so, you know, it was an easier decision to make. I knew I couldn't see my 77-year-old mom, like, for a while, because, like, we just don't know. And I still won't see her until I have adequate time to test, quarantine, test again, and then see her. So that's like at least 2 weeks, you know, before I can see my mom. So I'm planning to take all of January off just to go see her and be able to hug my mommy, because this girl needs a hug from her mom.
Where I work, most of the surgeries, they're elective, so people opt to have these surgeries. They're not like really like emergency surgeries, and they can typically wait. So during COVID, our department shut down, and because, well, obviously all elective surgeries were canceled. So I work with about 30 nurses in my department, and so there were 30 of us who didn't have anything to do, and we work under Partners, which is the biggest healthcare assistant in Boston. So Partners was like, well, we have these nurses that we're paying who aren't doing anything, we should find a job for them. So essentially, they told us that we had to go work in the COVID ICU at Mass General. And out of the 30 of us, I don't know, there were a handful of new nurses. Like, I'd never had ICU experience before, and we ended up going. And probably half of us came up with one reason or another not to go. And ultimately, there were 7 nurses that actually went into the ICU at Mass General and worked with COVID patients. And it was super hard because I'd never had an ICU background, and they told us that we had to work night shift, which I have 4 kids and I'm kind of old and I'd never worked night shifts. So to be able to work night shifts at my age was really super hard. And then for my training to go into the ICU, they taught us how to use a ventilator for 1 day for an hour and a half. And they taught us how to use all the ICU equipment, which, most ICU nurses, it's 6 months training. So for my first day, I go in and it was just really, really terrible. I don't think I would, no matter how much preparation I had, would have been able to do. I was never prepared for what I faced. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I saw people die. I was at the bedside with people who were dying, and I had to have their family members on an iPad and see them say goodbye to their family members, and I was the only person in the room with them. And they were not old. They were young people whose children were on the iPad, and they were losing their mother and they were losing their father, and they had no idea what was happening. And it was really, really hard because we still talk about it. We still say how terrible it was and how unprepared we were. And I think it was I felt like it was going to war, because soldiers go off to war and they fight for our country and they give the best that they can give and then they come home. And I think we as a society, we really have no idea what they've been through. And now I know, because that's exactly what it was like. It was awful. My family were sitting out by our fire pit one night, and we were talking about, my experience, and I just started crying. And I'm normally not a crier, so they didn't know what to do. I have boys, and boys tend to not be pretty emotional, right? It was amazing. Like, each one of them came up and they gave me a hug, and they said that they were sorry and that they understood and that they still respected me and were thankful. And so if I had to go through all that I went through, for them to be able to do that, it was well worth it, You teenagers are kind of supposed to be selfish. And they weren't selfish in that one moment, and that made me really proud. Every day when I go into work, I listen to the song, Humble and Kind. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Have you heard of it? So every day when I go into work, I listen to this song at one point in my drive-in. And I think it's a good lesson for me to get the words of the song in my head, because that's who I want to be. I want to be humble and I want to be kind, and I want to portray that to my patients and my coworkers and my kids. And if I go to work and I do those things and I give the best that I can give, then I feel like it's a good day.
Being an emergency room nurse absolutely is my dream job. I love patient care. I love being in the ER. It's different every day. You see different people every day. You're interacting with the public on a level that's just so humble. And not only that, but you're interacting with police, you're interacting with fire, you're interacting with EMTs, paramedics on a daily basis. Every day it's different. You never know what's gonna come in through those doors. So it's the adrenaline, it's the not knowing, I'm never bored. There's always something to do, there's always something exciting, different, traumatic to see and be a part of. There is the violence in healthcare. When people come into the ER, they're in chaos and they're out of control, it's very emotional. And they come in for all different reasons. They can come in for medical, they can come in for mental health reasons, and they're raw. And we see them when they're just at their worst. So they haven't had time to kind of get treatment or get the therapy they need. So, a lot of the time it's pretty dangerous. We get assaulted a lot, we get hit, we get punched, we get kicked, we get spit on, we get bit, we get slapped. My friend got her ribs broken a couple weeks ago. So it's a dangerous environment. And that part is just a little bit hard because they're trying to make changes to that in terms of like legislation but a lot of the times it's just kind of looked at as if, well, hey, you signed up for this as part of the job, so. During the pandemic, when these patients would come in and they were really sick, these people didn't even, get to say goodbye to like their family, because like their families weren't allowed to come to the hospitals. So, and sometimes a lot of the times there wasn't time to, call their families and have them do like a FaceTime and say goodbye. And so that was like really hard too. And then just the amount of deaths were really hard. We had a mobile morgue in the back of the hospital that we didn't have before because of the amount of people that passed away. And there was just so many deaths a day that we actually had to have like these big refrigerated mobile units come, and they would park in the back parking lot of the hospital, and they would be filled with people that passed away from COVID. And sometimes we had to help in putting them in there, putting the bodies in there. So that I never had to do that before. As an ER nurse, you do see a lot of tragedy and you do see a lot of deaths, but I think it was overwhelming with the amount of deaths you saw on like a daily basis. The other part that was difficult was I have a son who's 13 and I'm a single mom. So I'd have to, I would come home and like I didn't hug my kid. I didn't interact with him. Like I wasn't in the same room as him for a couple of months. I would just come home from work, strip my clothes off, before in my garage, before I got in the door. I would change and then I would just like isolate. Like I'd go straight to my room. So that was really hard. Like I just kind of had to separate myself from my son and my family and just, try to protect them from me. So it's been hard, but still, I would recommend this job to any, person thinking about getting into healthcare. I'll, even just being like the civil service, like I try to get my son to think about it, because you're outside, you're in the public, you're in the middle of like everything, like the heart of what's going on in the city. And it's just like, it's so rewarding, it's so exciting, it's so fulfilling, it's so humbling, and it's just, I wouldn't change it for anything.
You're the engine that makes all things go, and you're always in disguise, my hero. I see a light in the dark, smile in my face when we all know it's hard. There's no way to ever pay you back. Bless your heart, no, I love you for that. Honest and selfless, I don't know if this helps it, but good job. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. 6 in the morning. As soon as you walk through that door, everyone needs you again. The world's out of order. It's not a sound when you're not around. always on your feet, hard to keep that energy. I know when it feels like the end of the road, you don't let go, you just press forward. You're the engine that makes all things go. Always in disguise, my hero. I see a light in the dark, smile in my face when we know it's hard. There's no way to ever pay you back. Bless your heart, no, I love you for that. Honest and selfless, I don't know if it helps it, but good job. You're doing a good job, good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter. Yeah, it's a good job. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter. The mothers, the fathers, the teachers that reach us, the strangers and friends that show us to the end, the bottom to the top, the listeners that hear us. This is for you. You make me feel it. Don't get too down, the world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good job.